I'm trying a new layout today. You can tell my camera's in a different position. I'm down in my quilting room, and I was going to, because we've got big stuff to show today, and I was going to experiment with this. So humor me, but give me some feedback on how this works for you. So I thought we could start with the Hanukkah star, because people may be making them for Hanukkah. So thought I would start with that. And I'm going to change my camera. I have a second camera here.
Wow.
You like that? So this is the star that we made before. And Janet asked how you figure out the how to do the outline. You know, when you mount this to make a quilt out of it or a hanging something, we usually want to make a rectangle. And so making a rectangle out from this star is not simple, but I have what I think is a simple way for you to do it. So you take a piece of paper, and the first thing you decide is if you want, when you hang it, do you want it in portrait mode, as they say, where it's narrow, the width is narrower than the height. It's taller than it is wide. Or do you want it in landscape mode, which is wider than it is tall? Okay, so that's your first decision. And depending on the way you want to do it, you're going to fold your paper to make a midline like the equator from left to right on the way you want it. So here I'm going to make this one in landscape mode. So I've folded my piece of paper to make this midline. And now I'm going to use my ruler and mark that line so that we could find it. So there's my midline. The next thing we want to do is to mark the center. And since this is an 11-inch piece of paper, the midline is at 5.5. So I'm just going to mark the midline at 5.5 inches. So now I've marked the center of the paper and the equator, so to speak, of the paper. The next thing we're going to do is mark this in 60-degree lines. So how do we do that? Well, on my green board here, I have a line that says this is 60 degrees. So one thing I can do is set the paper that way, and then I'm setting it on the line. This line says 60 degrees on my green board. So I've laid it on the green board, and now I'm going to use my ruler to set it vertically. And so I'm using the markings on the green board again to set it vertically. And that should give me a 60-degree angle. So I'm going to mark it like this. So right through that center mark, edge to edge, I've made a 60-degree line. And similarly, I can either use that one or I can use this. The marks on the ruler will also give me a 60-degree line. So, for example, if I use this 60-degree line, I line it up on my equator line, and now I have a 60-degree mark. So I've divided this into 3 segments, and I should have carried that on through that center mark. And now, believe it or not, this is your pattern. Okay? Because the important thing to worry about when you're setting this is this angle. This is the angle we want to look. And look, if I set it here, why am I off? I did something off. I'll use one of the ones I did before.
It's a 45-degree angle.
Shouldn't have been. But here's my this is the 60 degrees I did last night. Somehow I did it wrong this morning. But anyway, once you have your pattern here, then you can see if I lay that star on there and I use these two segments, that's going to fit that exactly. So getting this angle correct is the most important thing. And even though, you know, this piece of paper is not as big as the star, but if I use these to extend it, both of these points are within the fabric. So I would do this on paper first before I actually do it. But look, there's your next segment. So if I put these two together, that's why I have the mark. This is segment 1, and this is also needed for segment 1. And then this is section 2. These two together will fit for section 2. And these two together will fit for section 3. Can you see that okay? And the next one, like that, for 4. And the next one like that for 5. And the next one like that for number 6. Okay, so it's going to take 2 of these, and each one of these segments is needed twice. So you're going to have to cut 2 pieces like this out of the fabric that you want to use for backing, and you'll use the 2 segments together in each place. Now, I wanted to show you that the fabric I chose, so this is the fabric I thought I would use as a backing.
Whoa.
And notice it's very directional.
Yeah.
And when you're doing a lot of segments out of something directional, you have to pay attention or it winds up upside down or sideways or something like that. So on my pattern, I drew these arrows so that when I separate them, I can tell which way is up. Okay? So as you lay it on the fabric. But I could take a piece of this fabric that's this size and cut it this way. If I want it to be bigger, then I want it to be bigger than 8.5, 11. So I'd cut my basic fabric bigger. But then doing these 60-degree segments is what you need to do to get the background right. And if you're thinking that this is too busy for this star, you're quite right. I'm not going to use this star. I actually got this package at the store the other day. It's called the Shimmer package. And all these fabrics have a little bit of metallic thread in them. So I thought I would make my star out of this. This is one of those jelly roll kind of things where you have 2.5-inch strips that are pre-cut, a number of different selections. So I didn't need to get a yard of each of these. I get a package with all of these in it. So that should be pretty neat. All right.
So I have a question, Joyce.
Sure.
On your actual star,
Yeah.
when you're ready to do the background, do you have seam allowance like ironed underneath? Or are you gonna make the star smaller on the back
As long as you get your angle correct, then the seam allowances will take care of itself. So yes, there is a seam allowance in here, but as long as the angle's correct, then it just scoots in a little bit more. You'll lose that 1/2 inch as usual, but
so you're gonna lose.
And I would attach this piece before I make this seam down the center. Okay, so you just carry on that seam all the way up to put them together. Or you could cut it like that and put it together with a Y seam. A little bit trickier, but that way you would keep, especially for my busy pattern, I wouldn't have that seam going up to chop up the pattern. I could make that all one piece.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Thanks.
So then you'd need 2 pattern pieces. One would make 3 of these segments, right? So if I use those, the next one I would do would be that one. See what I mean? So you get 3 of these larger segments out of your piece of paper. But yeah, plot it, especially when you're doing something tricky like this. I work it out on paper before I start chopping up fabric. So here you can see my finished star. This one is in portrait mode, and I used a green to complement the spring colors. So this would be a star maybe for Passover. And here is the Hanukkah star that I talked about in the film. I made this one in landscape mode, and you can see that I did the larger segments to keep from chopping up that very busy background. I hope you enjoy making your own beautiful stars.